Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show we have
Max Monroe.
Yes, we do. Max Monroe is a writing team, and they of Max and Monroe, and it was such a great interview. They're hilarious. Their books are hilarious, and it was a fun interview.
Yeah, so they do romantic comedy, and we talked to them about how they co-write together, and they're both discovery writers. So we talked about how they work their process of kind of writing into the dark, I guess is another way to call it, and another term for it. And then we talked to them about some other stuff too, like building their newsletter, dealing with negative reviews.
Yes.
And, and another thing that was interesting was why the quantity of books is critical to long-term success, because they talked about like, if you only have one book versus, a stable of books, it makes a difference in how you can handle and plan things for your business. So it was very interesting. Yeah. And another thing, this is our 80th episode. Did you realize that?
Oh my gosh, no, I didn't. We
never mention it.
We never mention that, but 80th, that's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, I got to mention that. So, that's coming up. But what have you been doing this week?
Working on this book, and I'm sending it to the editor tomorrow. So today's Friday, the 23rd. I'm sending it tomorrow. And, but I did take a little break to go to the beach with my mom and sisters, but I worked on it then. And y'all, the worst thing happened. They went out to the beach. I stayed in to write, and it's my least favorite. I was writing, some steamy scenes, or a steamy scene. And then I wrote a little bit of a different thing, and the computer died, but I back up pretty regularly. But for whatever reason, I lost all of that.
Oh no.
So I had to stay in another hour, try to recreate. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, it was an hour trying to find it. I did everything. I was on YouTube. I did everything. It's gone. So that was pretty depressing, but I rallied and I got it done. So yeah, the book's going out to the editors,
So congratulations. That's good.
Thank you. I'm excited, and I'm thrilled that today begins the second season of Ted Lasso.
Ooh.
So if you have not watched Ted Lasso on Apple TV, the first season, you can watch it, and then the second season starts today. And again, because I watched it again with my sisters and my mom. That's who I went to the beach with. And the writing in that show is so good. Like, I saw things that was the third time I'd watched it. And I saw things in that show that I had lost. I had not seen the last two times before. It's just so good. It's just really, really good. The one character in there, she's the owner of the soccer team. And every time you can just see them building conflict upon conflict upon conflict on her. And every time she thinks she's going to do the right thing, then some outside force comes in, usually her ex-husband, and ups the ante on things. And it's just so good. So anyway, I can't wait to watch it.
Well, that is cool. That is good. Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I actually was able to get back to writing this week.
Yay.
I was so happy. It feels so good. So there's something to be said for taking a break, even if it was longer than you intended it to be.
Right.
But so I'm going to get back to fiction writing, but I'm finishing up my mystery books podcast. I'm recording season 2. And so I'm talking about some of the foreign language edition mystery shows, TV shows I've been watching. And they're just like that. Like you're talking about, I rewatched one of them because I was going to talk about it on the podcast. And it was like the amount of like layering of themes and, how they, and visually, I like when you watch it the second time or the third time, that's when you pick up on like there's these two characters that they're very opposite. And I was like, oh, look at that. She's always dressed in like bright colors and frilly things or velvets, and he's dressed like in black and white. Or if they're in colors, they're in opposites, like he's blue and she's red. And it's just like things like that
that's so
first,
visual,
you're just catching up on it. So yeah, I've enjoyed that. The other thing is I listened to a podcast, and let me bring it up. So Sasha Black interviewed Helen Schurer, and if that's not pronounced correctly, I apologize on the last name. But Helen had mentioned us in a Instagram video, I think, that she did. Gave us a little shout out. So if you're listening, Helen, thank you for that.
Yes.
And this was a really good interview. And she releases one book a year, and she talked about how she releases her books and what she does in between to keep her readers engaged. And I had a little light bulb moment when I was listening to it, because she was talking about she did prequels in between to keep her readers interested. And she was saying that she did, like, she would take a character that people were interested in, and she would write kind of like a thing to kind of explain why they are the way they are. And I've always thought of like short stories. I think it's because I write mystery. I was like, well, if I do anything, it's got to have, the clues and the red herrings and the suspects and the resolution and all that. And it was like, I went, if they're interested in the story, if I give them a little like vignette that explains why this person is this way, that could be just as satisfying as, a complete like mystery short story. And so that was light bulb moment for me. So that was cool. Yeah.
That is great. Well, I'll have to listen to it because, I need those things with me only putting a book out a year. So that's interesting. I don't do that, but, you do have to work harder to keep reading engaged. Even if you release sooner than a book a year, even a book every 6 months or 5 months, you really got to keep that reader engagement going.
Yeah. But she talked about, how like you like to do really big launches, and she does the same, but she has a different type of launch than I think that you've done. But she used some of the same techniques, but anyway, so it was very interesting just to listen to it and how her strategy and tactics that she's used. Very, very smart.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I'll tune into that. Well, let's get on with the interview because Max Monroe, those girls are hilarious and they've got some really great things to share.
Yes. So here we go. Well, today we're really excited to have the writing team of Max Monroe with us. Hi, Max, and hi, Monroe. How are y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
We're so excited you're here. I've been waiting for this interview for a couple of months now, so I'm very excited.
We're excited to be here.
Well, let me read your bio and then we'll get into the questions. Max Monroe is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of more than 30 contemporary romance titles. Favorite writing partners and longtime friends, Max and Monroe strive to live and write all the fun, sexy swoon so often missing from their Facebook newsfeed. Sarcastic by nature, their two writing souls feel like they found their other half. This is their most favorite adventure thus far. So
I love that. Love it. So how did you guys get into writing? And then, so I guess tell us your individual stories. And then how did you guys pair up to write as a team?
Okay. Do you want me to go or do you want to go?
I'll kick it off, I guess.
Okay.
I'll start.
Okay.
So I actually am a meteorologist. That's what I went to the college for.
Wow.
Very useful now, as you might imagine. It's really funny too, because most, even my family will ask me the weather and I'm like, I don't know. I don't do that anymore. So I write now. But I was at home with a relatively new baby. That's when I first decided to start writing my very first book, which was in 2012. Mm-hmm. And I really expected, I don't know how long this is going to take me, how easily it's going to come, that kind of thing. And I wrote it relatively quickly, way quicker than I anticipated. It was more fun and came more naturally than I ever thought it would. And of course, I did all the wrong things. I mean, back then I didn't really, obviously I had it edited and stuff, but I didn't know what I know now about all the things that go into it. If I look back on it, it is painful to me to think about that book, to be honest, but that's how it goes. And so I kept writing, to what I would call mediocre success. I mean, I was doing okay. I think I'm trying to remember if I made it into the top 100 or not, but I did okay on my own. By the time I was at I think I wrote 15 books or so, but it was a labor of love, of love and of loneliness, I'll say, because I wasn't getting where I wanted to get, though I was doing probably better than, 95% of writers or whatever. It was just, I was plugging along. I had a young child. And so I eventually started to feel that burnout that I think a lot of us feel, where we're so tired that we love doing what we're doing, but we don't know if we can keep up all the effort for not a lot of reward. And Monroe was also, and she'll go into her, but she was in her solo career, and we met initially in an author group, and then had met at signings and all of that stuff, and had become friends. And we really started to lean on each other in that time, where we were both, in addition to our writing careers, being a struggle, we were going through some personal things. Both of us, separate things, but kind of, harder times. And we both just wanted to have a lot of fun. So we actually decided, let's try writing a book together, just for fun. I mean, that was as much as thought went into it, you would think. I mean, it is now our business, right? I mean, many, many hours a week. But I mean, that's all that happened. We said, let's write one together for fun. That was as much as went into it. And let's let go of all the pressure. No pressure from readers, because nobody knows who we are. We're just going to be anonymous. And let's just there's no notion of what our book should be or could be, or we're just going to write what we want to write.
Sure.
And have fun. And well, I mean, that book ended up taking off.
Yeah.
And here we are.
That's great. That's just, I love that story. Because, I mean, I don't know. I'm an extrovert, more extroverted than introvert. I still have a few introverted characteristics, but that is the hardest thing for me, is the alone time, just being alone all the time, and doing this alone it's a struggle. I mean, it really is a struggle. So I get that a lot. How about you, Monroe? What's your origin story?
Yeah.
So to speak?
Well, it mirrors Max's in a lot of ways. I had a young kid. I was the labor and delivery nurse. So I was a nurse for a decade. I was a nurse for 10 years before I started, before I left that job fully to write. So I wrote my first book in 2013, relatively quickly. I mean, writing had always been something that was, that I really loved to do, whether it would be poetry or journaling, that kind of thing. So it was it was just something that was always a part of me from little on. I just never really thought that I would actually make it a career. But it actually was something, when it was a more difficult time in my life, that was like the best escape ever. So that's how I ended up writing my first book. And I'm very similar with Max in that it was mediocre success. I had readers, but I wouldn't say that I was like crushing it. I published 5 books before Max and I started to write together. And I mean, I was working as a nurse. I had a young child. So there would be days I would work night shift at the hospital for 12 hours. And then I'd come home and not sleep very much, and then fit writing in somewhere in there. So, I mean, a lot of times it felt like I was working two jobs just to even write. But luckily it wasn't an escape. So I think that's the only reason that I even did it, to be honest with you. And yeah, I mean, Max and I became very close friends, and we're leaning on each other and building a really strong friendship. And you just know, especially, you know, after you're in your 30s and you've went through a lot of friendships, right? And it ebbs and flows. And by that point, you've learned so many life lessons. You know, when it's a friendship that it's like, this is, I can be my full self with this person. I can tell them anything.
Right.
And yeah, so that's how it was with us from the start. I think that's probably why when we write together, you know, if we just work well on so many levels. So we just said, let's just write a book together. You know, we have fun together. Let's write a book together. Cause we both like rom-com. That's kind of our thing. We have a very similar sense of humor, and there was just a magic when we started writing, and it was, now we can't mimic that now because we have so much fun together, but we've made this a career, right?
Yeah. So
there are days where we didn't have to be business minded then. We were just writing a book.
Right.
So you know, it was different in that it was it wasn't as stressful as it is now. Not that it's stressful, but you know, it's a business.
There's a lot of things that go into it. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. A lot of things that go into it. And even the fact that, it was hard working a full-time job and fitting in writing, but you still had the stability of your full-time job. Once you let go of that and it's just your writing career, that can be terrifying.
It's a lot of pressure to put on your creativity.
Yes, it's so much. It's so different than just writing just for your passion. But it was magic when we were writing together, and and there's one thing that we do well that I think probably is the biggest difficulty for people that try to write together is, you know, we don't go into it with an ego, and it's easy to have an ego because it's your words, and that's a difficult thing for anybody. You don't have to be like a crazy narcissist to feel that way, you know? It's coming from a personal place. And Max and I always maintain that she could go in and change stuff in my chapter, and I could go in and change stuff in her chapter. And we always just knew, like, you're making it better. That's how it always is. And if there would be a rare occurrence, which is very rare, I don't even know how many times it's happened, where we've really disagreed. Like maybe once out of, we're like 35, 36 books in. If we both disagreed on something, then neither one of us are right. Then we come to another solution of the problem. We handle that not only in the writing, but even in the business sense. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel blessed. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
I feel lucky because it's just not a normal process in the fact that we found each other, and that it's like we share the same brain when it comes to writing books, which awesome. Is crazy.
Yeah. It's just awesome.
It's wonderful and very, very rare. I think.
Very rare. Yeah, I think it is too. That's so great.
Because it's even difficult if people ask us, like, people interested in doing co-writing. We never really feel comfortable. Like, we try to give advice that we know for sure. Like, you know, you don't go in with an ego. You know, you can't take it personal if your partner is working to make something better. But there's a lot of things in terms of the dynamic that we're like, I mean, we work so well together that no book is written the same way. It always changes. It just depends on the book and what we're feeling. So
it would seem there would be a lot of intangibles, like when you're working with another person, that it would be really hard to break it down and say, do these 5 things.
Yes.
And you can write with, you know, whoever you want. I mean, I think that there's like a blending of personalities. And then there's the aspect of it that it's like the business, like you were talking about, once you start writing for business. I remember that point when I wrote my first book and I was like, this is great. This is lots of fun. Then it sold. And then I had to come up with book 2. And then suddenly it was like, oh, this is not quite as much fun. This is more like a job than just total fun all the time.
I remember, I mean, I still think to this day when I am in, the whole, this is just a pile of crap phase of the writing process.
Yeah.
I just think, I wish I just had that feeling I had when I was writing that first book. But that's so unrealistic because I was ignorant. I was ignorant and there was bliss in that ignorance. And so you can't really compare to that. Also, it's hard to define chemistry, which is what you guys really have. And so I think that does make it hard for you to say, well, this is how, why we are successful, because you can't replicate chemistry a lot of the time. So
no, you can't.
Yes. I mean, we have the kind of situation where we don't know who wrote what. By the time we get to the end of the book, sometimes, I mean, literally she'll be like, I laughed so hard at this part. And I'll be like, you wrote it. And she's like, no, did I? No, you wrote that. And I'm like, no, it was you. But like, we don't know. Sometimes we just, because we make the same jokes a lot of the time, or like, I said, we were talking with one of our staffers, basically one of our marketing guy the other day. And we were just saying that, that's one of our biggest problems is making the same joke. When we do revisions, we're so in tune a lot of the time if the subject matter is the same that we've made the same joke in the book twice because we both thought of it. And then so that's something we have to, we can't have it in there twice. It's not funny twice. So we have to figure out which spot's the better place for it. But we usually just think very in line with one another. That's what is really helpful.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, one of our questions is about your definition of success. So do you have the same definition of success when it comes to your writing in your books?
I think we do. We're on the same page with that. Because we want to, it's our livelihood, right? So there's several things that are successful. Obviously, Max, you can correct me if you disagree. There's several things that I would say are success. I mean, most people go straight to money, right? Like that's success, but that's not really all that we're focused on, right? I mean, success for us, we want to be able to, live a healthy life with our family. But it's building a brand that we feel like is us, is a genuine brand. And that when readers pick up our books, they know what to expect, but they also don't know what to expect. They know they're picking up a rom-com, but they don't know what we're going to throw at them. And they're excited to pick it up and escape and, hopefully laugh most of the time. I think that's probably, that's how I think we define success.
That's right.
Yeah. When we write a book, because especially now that we're so many in, it's funny how you'd think it would get easier, but it doesn't. It gets harder.
Yeah.
Because we take so much intention with making sure we're putting out a different product every time. We don't want a reader to say, I think this would be a failure to us if people started to say, this seems exactly like, whatever other book, or I get the same notion from this. We want every time to feel like a unique story. And I mean, that's part of our process that helps us with that, because we don't write to a formula. It's all character driven. But we take like a lot of care with it. We're both very invested in the product. For us, as soon as it goes out, if our core readers are happy, like I'm still loving Max Monroe, I will still want to read Max Monroe at book 35, 36, 37, not like, I'm pretty tired of them kind of thing.
Right.
That feels like success.
Yeah.
If we can keep satisfying that same group of people,
right.
Because there's always going to be an outlier who says, this book is terrible. Or I don't know this style. I don't like, they're not for us and we're not for them. So we don't mesh. But if we have that core reader group who we can keep satisfying that many books down the line, I feel like that for us is a success.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that
too.
And actually, I'm just realizing I'm saying great. So please don't turn this into a drinking game to our listeners, because if so, you're going to be drunk by the end of this, because I keep saying, oh, that's great. So, well, how many series do you guys have, or do you just have a series of standalones?
All of our series they're either complete standalones within a series, or they're interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
We prefer to write a series that you could pick up book 3 and, we prefer to do that. But I'd say our first series is an interconnect. I mean, you should read along from start to finish. Mm-hmm. But how many do we have? I would say 8.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Something like that. Yeah, and something like.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, are they like contained, like this one has 6 books, this one has 7, and they're completed, or are they kind of ongoing?
Our first series, the Billionaire Bad Boy series, there's the 3 guys in that. I mean, their series is completed, but they keep coming in other ways. Like the Wes, he owns a football team. So one of the series is the team, right? Mm-hmm. Now, that one we consider, it's the Maverick series. We consider it complete, but not quite. I mean, we could always add more.
Right.
There's one character people really love who we do plan to do something for later on. So it is, complete, but there's.
But you have a world. You have a world, and the characters, a series may be complete, but they may show up somewhere else. So I think readers love that. I think that's great.
Yeah. So what do you wish you guys had known about writing and craft when you started?
Everything. I wish I had known. I mean, like you really go in very naive about a lot of things, I think. But I also don't think I could change it. I mean, I could have tried to be like really in the know the first book, but when I put that first book out, it wasn't like, oh, I think I'm going to be a success. It was I just needed to get this out, and I feel like I've accomplished something. And, if 5 people buy it, hey, but there were a lot of things that I didn't understand about the inner workings of writing as a business at that stage in my life. I was still convinced that, most of the time was writing the books back then, but that is so not true to the 20th degree. We spend I don't know. I mean, we spend a lot of time writing books, but it's still only, 20% of our time, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't really change the journey, I guess, even if I wished I'd known a lot of things, which I definitely knew nothing. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. I wouldn't change it, because I like where we've gotten and we've slogged to get here. Yeah. Like I don't begrudge anyone for instantaneous success in any manner. I think that's fantastic, but we didn't have that. That is for sure. I mean, we are many, many, many books deep and we've worked for every ounce of it. So everything we achieve feels really significant.
Right. Yeah. That's great. How about you, Monroe? What do you wish you'd known about writing and craft when you started?
I think it would be great to know all the things, right, when you start. But it's kind of like life. And similar to what Max is saying, I mean, hindsight is 20/20. And sometimes you really have to experience some tough lessons to grow from that. And also, when it comes to, we're always trying to evolve our craft. I mean, I think you can never perfect your craft. That is a lifelong thing. You should always be challenging yourself in trying to evolve as a writer. In terms of being a writer. And I think this goes with any creative type. If you're a painter, if you are a musician, you are putting something that comes from inside of you out into the world. And not only are you doing that, you are doing that knowing that it will be critiqued. Now, some people will give you high praise. Some people will not. That is a reality. Not everybody is going, like, you're not pizza. You're not tacos. Not everybody is going to love you. And I think to grow as a writer, it's very important that you need to, as you're evolving your craft, if you're evolving it in a way where you know this is genuinely my best work up into this date. You know, we're book 36. This is my best work up into book 36. I put everything I could into it. Now book 37 is different, right? I think if you go with that route, if you focus on that, when you read, because you're going to see negative reviews, it makes you stronger in that you have thicker skin, right? And that is hard. That is so hard. And I sympathize. I more than I empathize so much with new writers. When you put yourself out there, and if somebody, you know, tears you down, that's a horrible thing. Right. You sit with that for so long. And a lot of times that bad review, even if there's 20 good ones, you remember the bad one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one you don't forget. And I think you have to be careful in that. It's okay to remember that and, you know, try to grow from it. But sometimes it can affect how you handle things, because just because somebody didn't like that, what you wrote, doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. You should actually self-reflect and see, is there a value in this or is there not? If I think about this, do I think I should have changed that? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't have, because it's your work, you know? So yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately you have to go through those struggles, right? I mean, the whole, I wouldn't say it's a cliche, but the struggling artist, the best work come from the people that have gone through struggle most of the time.
Right.
So you have to go through those hard lessons. I think it makes you stronger. Because if it's just given to you from the start, you don't even really know what you have then. And at this point, like Max said, I mean, we slog through. We've had incredible highs. We've also had devastating lows. And going through those lows, when you hit those highs, it is just like so much sweeter, you know?
You appreciate things much more after the rough times. Yeah.
And the thing about reviews, like my first 2 books, I did get someone's, you know, I had 1 stars like everybody else, but they were honestly things I didn't worry about. Like one was, this writer has clearly never been to Texas. I was only born and raised here. That's all. So, you know, those kind of reviews, I laugh at, and it doesn't. Yeah. But the 3rd book, like that book, I was 50,000 words in and scrapped it and started over. So that book was really hard to write. It was a book that, like, looking back, I love it. But at the time, I kind of just hated it because it was so hard. And so then when I did get negative reviews on that book, because it was a little bit of a tender spot for me, those hurt worse than anything before or even after, because that one book was so hard for me to write. And maybe at the time I did not have a lot of confidence in it because it had taken so long and it was so hard. But yeah, you just have to kind of let it go and say, you know, I've done the best I could at this moment, and I can do better. If I need to do better, I can do better later. And
yes. And I think it's important in those moments, like you're allowed to sit with that, you know, and feel bad about it. Right. Like it's okay. It created an emotional response. You have the right to sit with it. And if it's making you feel sad, you know, for that short period of time, that's okay. Like you should be able to feel it. But then once you get through that emotion, right, you give it a few days, then you self-reflect on it and see, is this give any value, or is this just somebody who just they don't understand what I was trying to do.
Right. Not my reader.
Not my reader. I think
it's learning to assess, like, what's worthy of change and incorporating. That's something that's a very difficult thing to come to. And once you get that point, but those bad reviews, they still hurt, even if you've got lots of books out and tons of confidence, those still are no fun. And you're right, the negative ones do linger much longer than the positive ones. The positive ones, like, oh yeah, that's great, I'm so glad they enjoyed it. And then like the negative ones are like, a knife to your gut. But but you just have to, if you're going to keep writing, you've got to either decide, is this something worth incorporating, changing, or whatever, or shake it off and move on, which is really hard for me. Yeah, but that's tough. Yeah. What about marketing? What do y'all wish you had known about marketing? No, this is a big topic, but
what don't we wish we had known about marketing? Right? I mean, honestly, we to this day, I wish we knew more about marketing. Because the truth is, in this profession, it really is the truth, is that trains are rolling constantly. You better just jump on the side and hang on, because what worked for you a month ago isn't going to work for you next month. And what worked for you, this month isn't going to work for you 3 months from now, because that's the truth. The market is constantly changing. What people want is constantly changing. So you have to hold a line of what am I, right? Like for us, we are steady, feel good romances. We like to have fun. We like to write fun. So we hold on to that. Every once in a while, we get like a little dark twist in our heart or something that we have to quench. So we have like 4 or 5 books that are a little off brand for us, if you want to think of it that way. And we took those deviations because our minds needed to go there and get it out. But that's the challenge with marketing, is it's a full-time job in and of itself, because it's constantly changing. I could tell you for a fact that we have books that are similar, or maybe not in storyline, but in feel, in vibe, in whatever, from 2019 that you wouldn't be able to do the same thing with them in 2021 by even a long shot, and actually expect them to have the same success. Like take our book from 2019 that was super successful, put it in 2021, and it might have been mediocre, because that's just the way it rolls. So we wish we knew everything now. We still wish we knew, but I think probably the one thing that I really wish we had started earlier, thinking this is super important. We always knew, but we never really gave it the credence, is just your newsletter. That's your direct point of contact to people, no matter what's going on. And that's speaking from people who really take their newsletter seriously. We have a seriously curated newsletter we do it weekly. We're all about entertaining readers in there. It's not just book news and book promos. And we write original content for our newsletters every week. And it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And it keeps people engaged. But we didn't work on building the size of our newsletter as early as we should have. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we talk about this all the time on this podcast, but the success that I had with that first book came because I had created a newsletter before the book came out, like 100%, because I had 1,200 people that wanted that book because they had read a preview of it. And so it's just so important. And it took me a while, like a year, to kind of figure out why did that book do well? Well, it was because it had an audience before it even came out. And so it is really super, super important. You have anything to add, Monroe, about?
No, I Max and I are on the same page, obviously, with this one. The newsletter is probably, if we could have done anything earlier, really focused on it earlier, it would be that. I think, it's changing. It's always evolving. You have to literally be ready to just switch up something at the drop of a hat. You really do. You have to be willing to go with the way the market is shifting, to go with the way social media is shifting. And you need to, in terms of advertising, you have Facebook, you have Amazon, you have all sorts of advertising outlets. Mm-hmm. They are also changing. And if you go in with a mindset of like, oh my gosh, like all we do is advertise Facebook, and now Apple's changed this, the update, and now the audiences are different. If you go in with that versus, okay, Facebook's changed. All right, well, let's keep an eye on it. Mm-hmm. What do we think? Let's start thinking outside the box on what we can do differently to maybe offset any future effects it might have on us. Right. So I think it's a hard mindset, and some days it gets hard, right? But for the most part, you really have to be willing to, if you want to get your books out in front of people, you want to have success in building your brand, you've got to go with the times. You're going to have to, or else you will fall off. That's how it goes. And the market is moving so fast. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to do. And I think the other thing, especially, for new writers starting out, it's fantastic how much social media we have, that all different places, TikTok is rising. There's all kinds of places to go, but that can get overwhelming, and you can feel like you have to be growing. I got to grow here and here and here and here. That's not what you should do. You should focus on one or two things, and you figure out, you really think on it, and you could test it, and see where should I be trying to get an audience engaged on social media. And this is outside of the newsletter, obviously, but maybe you're really great with Facebook. Like maybe you're really great with Facebook Lives. Like, that's something that I think I can build an audience doing this. Or maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you are fantastic at Instagram or TikTok. Maybe that's your thing. You find those niches where you excel. Those are your strong points on what platforms, because they're all different. They all have a different flavor. And you focus on that. I mean, you can have accounts, you can have a Twitter, and you can have accounts everywhere, but you find one or two that you're really going to try to grow your audience on, because you can't do them all. No. You won't write books. You will just be trying to grow a social media audience, and that's it.
So we've talked about, and I kind of think I know what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask this question anyway, because I think it's good for, the whole premise of the podcast is what you wish you'd known. Mm-hmm. But have you ever made a mistake that turned out to be a good thing? So I know that you guys look at things like that and go, well, those things brought us to where we're at, and we're happy with that. But is there something you can think of that you thought, this is, we might have just screwed the pooch on this one, and then it turned out to be okay? So
do you want me to go? I have something.
Yeah, because I'm thinking. I mean, I know there's stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think we started out writing rom-com. And now there are some authors that can shift genres and just do whatever they want. Yeah. Those are a very rare breed. So we started out with rom-com. And then, like Max said, sometimes you get that feeling, you want to write something a little darker, a little more emotional. We wrote a 3-book trilogy. The first 2 ended in cliffhangers, called the Stone Cold Fox series. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic series, and it's a thriller, and it's a romance. Obviously, that's our jam. But sure, there's humor infused in it. I think whenever you have the two of us writing, you're going to have humor, but it was far more serious tone than what we had written previously. Did they flop? I wouldn't say that. They did okay. And there's readers still that when they read those, they're like, whoa, this is so different, but I really enjoyed it. But while I have no regrets writing that, it actually, in that moment, in terms of building our brand, it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. We should have stuck with our rom-com. Yes. But by doing that, that made us very sure that if you want to build a brand and keep, building on readers, they they want rom-com from you. That is what you have established. So that is your bread and butter. That's what you build your brand off of. Now, that doesn't mean you can't throw a passion project in there every once in a while, which we still do. But you should never expect the passion project that's not going to be that's not going to be your revenue generator. That is just a passion project. You're probably not going to advertise it as hard. You might just write it and just throw it out there, and readers that want to read it. And that's it. But I think because technically it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I think that a lot of people need to learn that lesson. That you can write what you want, but you have to know that if you've built any kind of audience with a certain genre, that's what they expect. And if you don't give that to them, not everybody's going to come over and read your new thing.
It sounds like that gave you clarity. That helps you focus more on your rom-coms.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I mean, we'll still write outside of the box. That is inevitable for us. We're in a very rom-com moment now. It's not even a chore, right? But there are times it can. I mean, 2020 was a very hard year to write rom-com.
Yes, it was.
So, yeah. So I'm sure down the line, but we just know what to expect in that. Like, that's not going to be a revenue generator. That is we just need to get this out. This is a passion project.
Right. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Max, do you have anything to add? Or
well, it's in a similar vein, but it's all these lessons learned. We actually, when I think back, we did a book that is a rom-com, but it's a little outside the box-ish. It's a complete standalone, and it has several things to it, to be honest. Is number one, we put a smoker on the cover. And we didn't really think this would be a big deal because everybody's got smokers on their covers. I mean, it's just, oh, he's a baddie, whatever. Yeah. But man, did people hate it on our cover. Man, did we get some backlash for it. Because people expect our heroes to be somewhat upstanding individuals. Not that, smoking, but it was just the wrong vibe for what we put out there. And we heard about it, that's for sure. And it was a lesson of, okay, well, we probably shouldn't put a smoker on the cover anymore. We changed that cover. And so that's the other part of that lesson, was learning to pivot, because it had several things. It had that cover. And sometimes you can get really in your head, where we thought the title was super cute, which the title has stayed, but we thought the blurb was super cute, right? Like, to us, it was just so perfect, so engaging, so everything. But it really kind of missed the mark with everybody else. And you had to learn to pivot. We may think this thing is the jam. We are into it. We think it's so clever, so smart. And everybody else is like, what are you doing? So it was a lesson in saying, okay, well, you're not stuck with the original product as far as, the book is, if you believe in the book, you believe in the book, but the marketing is a completely different animal. You could take a book that is not successful because of marketing. But I think that's what people don't understand, is that it could be a fantastic book. It could be the best book, but if you don't market it right, that thing's gonna, flip flop like a fish on the shoreline. It is not gonna do what you want it to do. And you have to be willing to say, I was convinced this is right, but it's wrong, obviously. So we have to change it, and you'll be glad that you changed it. But it's just like writing, it's personal. You've put all this work into it, all this thought into it, there's a lot of man hours that go into thinking of how are we going to market this? How are we going to, or this is perfect for the theme of the book. This really is on target, but it's not what's selling. So you've got to take a different angle and be willing to do that.
I think what you said was key, was that there's nothing wrong with putting a picture of a smoker on the cover, but obviously it wasn't what your readers wanted or expected. So for that book and for those readers, that wasn't what they wanted. And so, yeah, a lot of times we have to try things and figure out, oh, okay, that didn't work with my audience. So let me try this other thing. So, so smart to keep working till you find the right thing.
It is. And it's a strong lesson too. And you can have authors that you look up to, right? That you're like, they're killing it. Or I just love their style. It could be all kinds of reasons you admire somebody, but you're not them. So it doesn't mean you're not as good as them. Doesn't mean that you can't be just as successful or if not more successful as them. But it means that you can't mimic them and be genuine and authentic, because that comes across. So we could have been like, well, but so-and-so has a smoker on their cover and that book did great. Or we could be like, well, that works for them, but that doesn't work for us, and sometimes there isn't you can't pinpoint the exact reason, but you're like, that is not apparently part of our brand, right? We didn't think it was a big deal, but our readers do. And we respect, their reaction to it. So, I think that was also part of the lesson too.
Yeah. Well, what is the biggest mindset change you've had to make during your career?
Well, I think we've been fairly fortunate that we've had a pretty open mindset from the beginning, but I would say we've had to adapt as things have gone on, that it's not going to go how you expected sometimes. And one of those main lessons, I think, for us has been not counting so much on one particular book. Keep writing books, keep putting them out there, get, obviously put good books out there that you're proud of, but get a quantity out there that can support you instead of expecting one book to be, a rocket launcher, because we've had so many instances of a book being a favorite of ours, convinced this is it. This is how could you not like this book? And not that the books weren't well received, but they were not sellers. That's just flat out. We thought it was going to be this, and it was, this kind of thing. And it was not what we wanted or expected. And that leads to disappointment. Versus if you shift your mindset to say, it's not any one book, we're going to keep our plan. We have a year worth of schedule outlined, and we don't know which book is going to hit the spot. Could be any of them, could be none of them, could be two of them, could be four of them. We don't know. We're just going to keep going. And if we do this schedule, we'll hit the, monetary, whatever marker we're trying to hit. So, but we don't know which book is going to do well. We don't know which, and we're going to be okay with it. We're just going to say, this is our plan. Yep. Keep moving. Well, and we definitely didn't used to do that. There would be a lot of dwelling in the could have done better or whatever, A lot of
lying awake at night, pondering why. Well, that brings me to kind of a specific question for you guys, because you were talking about your plan. So tell us about co-writing. Like, what's your process? How do you divide your task? What do you wish you'd known about co-writing?
Well, this kind of goes into why it's always difficult for us to give people advice.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for coming.
And we're done. Okay. So I think for us, when it comes to the writing process, we are in the moment writers. Luckily, we are always in the same moment. So sometimes, if we're purely talking about writing books, sometimes we will do something where Max will write a chapter, I will write a chapter. Sometimes we will do where Max will write one point of view and I'm writing the other point of view. And then you're pretty well plotting it out. That's kind of what we did more in the beginning, but we realized we don't even need to do that. We write better books when we really let it be character driven, where you have a few you know how you're starting, you know where you're getting there, you know some basic plot points, but if we start really outlining it all, it really feels like we've locked ourselves in a box, and we're the type of writers that the inspiration kind of comes on the fly. Sometimes it just you think the chapter is going to go this way, and it's like, here we go, it's not. Because of that allows us to send, a lot of times we'll, I'll write 3,000, send her the book, she'll write 3,000 the next day. There's been times, she started the book, the first 15 chapters, and then I take over on the last 15. Usually I like that I say 15 because it always ends up being 50
funny.
chapters.
Like 47 and
It's a mental game we play. Like it's about 30, there'll be about 30 chapters. It's always over.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it's very book by book for us. It just depends. We definitely brainstorm the plot together, the characters together, what we're wanting to create with it. And we both are on the same page in terms of a starting point and where we're kind of seeing this lead to, right? Is it a slow burn romance? Is it a, instant chemistry kind of thing? We're always on the same page with that. But when it comes to the writing, we do not write. We've tried. I mean, it'd be great if we could just write with like 8 to noon. I am going to write, and then I'm going to send you this and you take over at 1.
Yeah.
We can't do that. It doesn't work, but we're getting better with letting that go. Right. Because as you're writing, there's one thing you should never do to yourself is carry a guilt of, I was supposed to write 3,000 words today and I got 500.
Right.
So a lot of times you're like, well, tomorrow it's 5,000, well, by the end of the week, it's going to be 20,000 words.
It's like you're digging your hole deeper and deeper each day. Yes.
Yes.
Jami's banging her head on the table because she understands.
Yes, you won't hit it. So we both, this has taken some growth, right? Like this has taken time, and I'm not saying we're perfect in it, but we're getting better, where we both are like, it's not working today. Like, I'm just not, maybe you've got a lot of life stuff going on, right? And you're distracted, or maybe your brain is still working out. Like you have an idea of how the book is going to go at that part, but maybe your brain is still really working it out. It needs a day or two. Sometimes you have to take the day or two. And even if it makes you feel like this deadline's getting closer, a lot of times if you take that day or two and you do what you need to do, which could be a million different things. It could be, sitting on your couch mindlessly watching Grey's Anatomy episode after episode. It could be, a whole, it's whatever is your thing. A lot of times when you come back to it, that inspiration will strike, and that writing, you hit the deadline, you get through it. And that takes time to get there, I think. And I kind of veered related to co-writing, but that's something that's kind of how we work. Is it's a very spontaneous, we have a very loose plan, but it's very spontaneous when it comes to writing. Yeah.
So in this fairy tale world of your co-writing, because now I'm like, it's a place I want to go and visit. Do you guys have like challenges, or what are the biggest challenges you've had to kind of overcome? Not really.
We do pretty. No, we do pretty. Okay, so we do pretty well together. We mostly agree, so that's a big helper.
Mm-hmm.
But what she was talking about, what Monroe was talking about, we had to learn to get there. It wasn't all just overnight, like we're perfect, kind of thing. I think in the beginning, there was a lot of self-consciousness, if you will, about giving those words to someone else. And there's an ego factor, but there's also she going to think this is good enough? I don't want to let the team down kind of thing, So But I mean, luckily we're so far past where we're at that stage anymore. I mean, we're comfortable in saying like, I might have sent you some garbage, but I'm pretty sure you'll know what to do. And, usually the person wasn't off, but it's just a feeling, but we're secure enough now where I'm not thinking she's going to judge this when I send it to her. I'm thinking, thank God she's getting it, because she's going to work out what I was completely missing the mark on.
This is what I was trying to say. Can you say it for me, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So it is, I mean, it is sometimes an advantage to have the two brains going, and but that doesn't mean we're without. I mean, we are the worst to our future selves, is who we really like to be mean to. Plot notes that we think are just spectacular in the moment, and then you get to it and it's like they have the wildest night ever with the hottest sex they've ever had, and we're like, well, that's specific. I'm really glad we were helpful. That was
thanks, past me.
Past us. Thank you. That's great. But that's because of how we're built. We do that to ourselves because in the beginning, if we get too detailed, we get in that place where like, well, we wrote it already. The plot notes itself felt like we wrote the chapter. I'm like, well, I'm all used up. I don't know what else to say.
Exactly.
So sometimes we leave ourselves notes that are like, wow. She actually, with one of our last books, that she was like, she was in the end and she had gotten to this where it was like this big climactic moment. It was supposed to be this huge thing. And the note we left was just like wild, but huge emotion. And she came to me and she was like, what on earth are we supposed? I mean, they've been pretty wild the whole time. What were we thinking here?
How are we going to top that, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
that's funny.
I mean, we're not.
This is a good time to ask a question. I know a lot of people will be curious about, does writing together, does it go faster? Because I think some people think if I had a writing partner, I could put out more books more quickly. So is that true for y'all or not?
I mean, it probably is, right? I think the thing that takes longest, because you have two people that are, because it's not like just one of us revises the book, both of us thoroughly go through the book. So that the revision process probably takes longer. Even the edits take longer because we're both doing it.
Because you're both involved, yeah.
Yeah, we're both involved. But in terms of, I think what makes it go faster is that you have two people, two brains working on something in terms of inspiration. So it's not like, I mean, yeah, we've published a lot of books, but it's not like we're just like this plethora, this well of inspiration. And I sit down at my laptop and I'm just writing away. You know, we have some books are hard and it's surprising the ones that give you trouble, right? Even if you love the book, you know, it's a good book. Kind of like what you were saying, Jami, you know, you had to scrap one and then go back, scrap the first 50,000 and go back. Some books just give you a hard time and it has nothing to do with it. If it's a good book, it's just sometimes that's how they go. So I think with two people, that really, it helps you get through that faster because a lot of times you're generally both not in that same moment, or one isn't as much in that moment. So that is helpful. Because I don't necessarily, there's some people that are just as prolific as we are in terms of how many books they're publishing and they're doing it on their own.
I think it would help like with the humor because I'm funnier when I'm with other people.
Yeah.
And so, and I've said this on here before, like I wish I hadn't used all my good jokes in the first two books because, you know, every book I'm like, I got to come up with something funny. And I think I've used all the good stuff. So, but it would be, if you had someone to bounce things off of and, you know, how you do with a friend, things just become funny. And so I think that would be not easier, but better, you know, just a better process.
Yeah. And you lean on each other during those really hard times because we hit those times with a book where you are truly deadline crunching and you have a mountain to overcome in terms of meeting an editing deadline. And it's a lot easier to do that when you have your friend, your best friend is in it with you, right? You can keep motivating each other and feeding off of that.
Right.
When you are doing that on your own, unless you have a very core support of authors that understand, I can see that that's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's definitely a challenge.
So I want to ask you, when I first asked you guys if you wanted to be on the podcast, you said yes. And we tried to do it because you were going on a writing retreat together to kind of plan your year, but that didn't work out. But I'm very curious about this. So how do you do like this once a year, or do you do it just when you feel like it's necessary? And do you plan out for the whole year?
There's two stories to this. One is the dream and one is the reality. So when we plan it, we say once a month because it's the truth for us. 110% is our partnership is based in our friendship. We did not start this as a business originally, which is sometimes helpful and is sometimes tricky, right? Because it's basically like we dove into a marriage, but like on that show Married at First Sight kind of thing where, we get along, right? We're friends, but like business sometimes comes with some hard stuff, right? Hard decisions, and it's just a different arena. So for us, we found over the years that if we get together regularly, where we can really tap into that friendship model of what really started it all for us, because it's so much easier in person, right? I mean, we talk on the phone every day and we gab and this and that, but it's mostly business centered, apart from a few tangents. Yeah. But when we get together, it really brings all those emotions down to the surface again and settles everything out. And we're, even keel again kind of thing where we're not feeling stressed and all that. So when we originally come up with the plan, it's yes, we're going to get together every month. And we really do try for that. Yeah. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. So when it doesn't happen, like these past 2 months have been pretty much insanity. So it just didn't happen. Well, 3 months, I guess. Now we're in July. It just didn't happen. But like we had plans to get together in August. And so we just keep trying basically. Right. But yeah, the dream and the reality are a little bit separated by real life. A little bit, but it definitely makes a difference for us if we can get together more often, just for emotional well-being is all. Because when we're together, it really goes back to that. We're like a set of high school girls, with doing a sleepover kind of. It's just a different vibe than every day to-do list, get it done. Yeah. We have this deadline. We have all these marketing tasks to do, so it's just a different vibe. Not that we don't work when we're together, because we do, like dogs pretty much. But
and then do you plan out your books in advance, or do you just kind of say we'll get as many done as we get done? Or
we have to set editing dates for ourselves. So we do plan out. We're usually the most would be a year in advance. Usually it's 6 months at a time is what really is kind of good for us. Mm-hmm. So, but we have to set editing dates because that will keep us on task. Otherwise, if we don't have those concrete dates there, we will squander time. That's what will happen.
Great answers. I think our listeners would be interested in that. So thank you.
Yeah. What do you think has been the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success?
Set ourselves up for success. I think for me and Max, when we started, we were anonymous. Because the reason we made that decision was because we had readers under our original pen names, right? When we were writing on our own, and we didn't want people to come in with an expectation because we were combining, right? And also, we didn't know what we were going to create. It was a learning process. So that's why we went with an anonymous route, and we stayed anonymous for a year or 2 years, I guess. We stayed anonymous. And then when we, revealed ourselves, we always stayed just true to ourselves, like, I think it's very easy in this world with social media and people showcasing what's going on with their lives, or, we're surrounded by this all the time. And it's easy to say there's somebody who you follow on Instagram and you're like, man, they're so cool. Like their whole scheme is cool. Everything they post is cool. That doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. You have to because you're cool too, but in your own way. We all are. I truly do believe that, like, we all are quirky and cool in our own ways. You just have to be willing to figure that out. And if you're genuine in that, I think that's probably the most important thing you can do with your brand. If you can stand behind your brand and like, this is genuinely who I am. And that doesn't mean you need to like air out your dirty laundry to people. But I think, Max and I we try to be positive minded. We're people that thrive by trying to maintain a positive mindset. So that's what we bring across to our readers, which works out well. It would be very horrible if we were very deep, dark people writing rom-com. That would be very confusing. Yes. But, our personality matches our brand of humor and our rom-com. So we stay true in that. And, that's why we have no issues making fun at ourselves. We get a kick out of that, right? So that's probably the best thing that we've done. I mean, I think we have, we've done some things really great. But if you didn't have the foundation of that, I don't think anything else would have been possible.
So you've just really stayed true to who you are.
Yeah.
As authors and as people, really, and as friends, really.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And keeping in mind that, what people want from us, they want us to be genuine and we want to be genuine, but people come to us for entertainment. That's what we are. That's what, that's what our profession is. We write books for people's entertainment, but people don't come to our newsfeed to see us, like having a breakdown or whatever. They come for entertainment. They don't want to, that's not what they want from us. And so we just keep that as a mental, if you need to have your moment, we have it with each other, which is, a blessing. But, and for everybody else, it's all, sunshine, and we're here to make you laugh. That's really it.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's super important. I just think that, staying true to your brand and who you are is just, that's great. That's a great answer. You guys.
Okay.
So tell me, do you guys, did you start out with a contract, like for the co-writing and stuff?
We did.
Okay. That's
actually
very smart. Yeah.
Before we published our first book, we did. We didn't know what was going to happen, right? But we knew that because we're friends, this is we could be handling this as a business too. So we do have a contract that establishes exactly what we both want.
And then does it include in there, like if something happens to you, God forbid, then everything reverts to Max and vice versa?
Yes. Yeah.
I very morbidly call it the death contract.
Excellent.
That would be a great title for a thriller.
The death contract. Yeah. And for us, it was important. And it's important for us that if God forbid something happened to one of us, that our families would be,
Yeah. Well, it's all laid out what happens. There's no questions. And that actually reduces stress. It's a little stressful to think about it now, but it's better in the long run. So yeah, it's very smart.
Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find Max Monroe and your books.
Well, Amazon, right? Most of our books are Kindle Unlimited. And then our website is authormaxmonroe.com. So you can find our books there. We have a suggested reading order on there. And we also have, we sell audiobooks and paperbacks as well, but Amazon would be the go-to retailer for our books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a funny story because we have one book that's not in KU, but that's just because we just keep forgetting to move it. So, but hey, if you're on another platform, there's one book out there.
Yeah, there's one title.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks you guys for being here. It was great to talk to you and to give us a little insight into how you do your co-writing. And I think it's going to be just really helpful for people who are interested in doing that. Mm-hmm. So we'll have all of the links to all the places you mentioned, and they'll be at wishidknownthenpodcast.com. So thanks for listening today. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.